Hey, are we live? We are 7 seconds into live. Okay, welcome, guys. I am the plant-based queen, and I help women create diet freedom with plant-based nutrition, with habits and lifestyle change, and some psychology tools, which I'm going to teach you today. So, I am super pumped to share with you a tool that I learned from a woman called Brooke Castillo. She calls it the model. I'm going to share with you the way that I've interpreted it, the way that I work with it with my clients. And I'm going to share with you exactly how you can stop creating the results that you're seeing that you don't like and start creating results that you do like. This is one of the most profound tools that I think I've come across in my coaching kind of self-development, my coaching career so far. And it is one of the most used tools that I use every single day. So I want you to recognize that you have the power right now to change the results, to change your current reality, no matter what you think right now, no matter what you think. There is possibility. Now, I know it feels difficult. I know you're going to be sat there thinking, oh my God, Bianca, if it was only that easy, I would have changed. Yeah, I totally get that. But you didn't have the tools, the knowledge, the wisdom, and the belief that you can actually change your current reality. So I hear quite a lot of women being feeling like very unempowered in the sense that they'll say, oh, so and so has really annoyed me, or so and so has upset me, or, the dog shat on the carpet and it made me angry. And what typically happens in those moments is people will shut down, people will try and avoid the reality, they will distract themselves with social media, maybe dive into food when they're not hungry. I hear quite a lot of the time people will be saying, if it wasn't for that person or if it wasn't for this person, I would have lost weight, I would have gained, I would have not gained weight. But the problem with all of this is it's not taking responsibility. So you're essentially leaving your life in everyone else's hands, right? You are saying, my life, my results, my circumstances are a result of everyone else on this planet but myself. Now, you can continue with thinking that and believing that. That's perfectly fine. If you want to change your current reality, however, we need to start questioning the truth behind that thought. Okay. And we're going to start by I'm going to ask you to approach this with an open mind. Now, if you do not want to create any different results, or you don't want to bring anything into your life, and you don't want to change anything into your life, and you want to stay in victim mentality and tell yourself and convince yourself that your current reality is based on everyone else's experience, then cool, that's perfectly fine. This video is not for you. This video is not for you. But if you are open to the potential and the reality that is that you are 99% in charge of everything that you experience and you do, then you are going to be able to create the results because you get to see where you have that responsibility, that opportunity to create the result instead of sitting back and say in victim mentality and saying, "Oh, it's all happening to me. I can't do anything about this." Right? That's typically where clients will come to me and be at, hey, it's not my fault. This happened and this happened and this happened. And if it wasn't for so and so pissing me off, I wouldn't have eaten those chips. And right, that's very much victim mentality. If you want to step out of that and into a victor mentality of saying, imagine if something happens, something devastating happens, and you don't go and eat your emotions because you don't need to eat your emotions. Imagine having that level of self-awareness, that level of discipline. It doesn't come from discipline. It comes from this tool that I'm going to teach you today. And I've just jumped off a call with a client, and the problem with this, I'm going to tell you straight up front, right? The problem with this tool is that quite often, because you are biased, you will not see, quite often you will not see where you fall. within this model, right? You will struggle to find where you are going wrong. That is where coaching comes in. But I'm going to teach you the tool, because quite a lot of the time you will be able to find that, right? But not all of the time. Oftentimes when it is the most exacerbated, when it feels like it's the most emotional, that is probably where you're going to struggle with the most. Where you've got really hard conditioning, really hard program, that is where you'll struggle with the most, trying to change this by yourself. But if you recognize this model and you're able to find the thoughts and you're able to find the things that where you're falling short, you can change that and change the reality. So you can literally change the shitty reality that you might be living in right now and create a better reality. So let me share my screen. I need to pick up Zoom because I want to share this slide with you guys. Like I said, this is it's one of the best tools that I've learned. So I have named it the chain reaction. This is not the original. This is the way that I see it. I see it as a chain. It's like a chain of events. It's like a domino effect. I was actually going to rename this, but there was too many things to rename in my program, so I didn't. I was going to name it the domino effect because one thing happens and then the next thing. So what I'm going to do is just go through one by one with you, okay? So let me know if you can see my screen. Just type in yes into the chat for me. First and foremost, something happened in our life. The dog shits on your carpet, your boss yells at you, you're running late in traffic, you get a flat tire, someone dies. Okay, something happens. Now, according to the model, this means this is neither positive or negative. Nothing is either positive or negative until you have a thought about that thing. Okay, so something happens and it is a neutral event, a neutral circumstance, but then from this you can have a thought around it. Now we know this to be true because, for example, your neighbor might pass away and you might think, this is really, really sad, I'm upset. You might think it's bad that they have died and that they've passed away, and I'm going to feel sad about it, right? I can have a thought that is more neutral, more positive, and I can say, well, isn't it great that you had the experience? Like, how awesome is it that you had the experience of knowing that person, of being there, of being their support, of being their neighbor, right? It's not just thinking negatively or positively, it is thinking on purpose, okay? It is thinking with intention. So you can have an event or a circumstance happen, and then you have a thought around that thing. So that thought you can choose is either positive or negative, because you have 100% control over your thoughts. You get to choose any thought and you get to get rid of any thought that you have. You don't get to choose the thoughts that come up, okay? And thoughts don't necessarily make you a good or bad person until you act on them. So what are you doing? What happens when we have a thought? We have a feeling. Quite a lot of the time, people will feel something, but they don't know what the thought is. Let me explain what's going on there. So, as a human being, your main job is to stay alive. Your only job on this planet is to stay alive. If you get home at the end of the day and say, I didn't do anything, or I don't feel like I achieved anything, just remember you achieved the most important thing about being a human being, that's staying alive. Okay, so think yourself lucky and grateful that you did the number one thing. That's the only thing that you needed to do today. So as a human being, your job is to stay alive on this planet. So what happens is we have our senses, we've got our smell, touch, taste here, right? And we have this data, we receive data in the taste, in the form of taste, in the form of smell, in the form of noise, right? In form of what we see. So we use our senses. We see and create, we have this data, And then that goes into our head and we create a thought about it, because we need to recognize whether it's a threat or not a threat, right? We need to recognize whether we need to run for our life or not and conserve energy. Okay, do we need to run for our life, or are we going to survive and it's all going to be cool? So you have to interpret that data in order to do the only thing that is required as a human being to stay on this planet, to stay alive. So, I mean, you've got to remember that our wiring, this reaction only happens because our brain is still stuck in primal days, right? It only happens because it is a survival mechanism that has not adapted with the technology that we have nowadays. It has not adapted to the life that we live nowadays. So you have this data around you, you interpret that as a threat or not a threat. And then what happens is we get a chemical reaction sent out in our body that reacts to that thought. Okay, so that chemical reaction in your body is a feeling or an emotion. A chemical reaction is that the heaviness in your chest, the butterflies in your belly, the lump in your throat, the trembling, the tingling, right? That is a chemical reaction that is physically happening. You cannot deny that those are not things, right? We feel those things. We've all felt those things before. So that is a feeling or emotion. And it is triggered because you've had a thought about something of whether that thing is a threat or not. But the thoughts expand a little bit more than threat or not. Okay. And the beautiful thing about being a human being is it's not just threat or not, it's things like love. It's things like safety, which is a threat, I guess. Belonging, right? So whether you love someone, that is helping you survive for longer. It all boils down to survival, for God's sake, really. So you have this chemical reaction, and that chemical reaction will encourage you to take an action. Okay, so if you're feeling love, then you'll probably go and hug someone. If you're feeling joy, kiss someone. If you're feeling joy, you might go and hug someone. If you're feeling anger, you might want to punch something. If you're feeling frustrated, you might want to cry. So you have a reaction to that emotion. Okay. A reaction could be you doing something or even not doing something. Let's not forget that not doing something is a way that we react, right? So, for example, not doing the task that you were supposed to do. That is a reaction, an inaction, or action. They are all a result of that emotion. And again, they are based on the 4Fs, right? Fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. So your action will probably be a fighting, a flighting, a fawning, or a freezing action. So how many of you have just sat there like scrolling social media, just totally checked out, right? How many of you have ran away from a situation emotionally, mentally, cut people off, flown to the other side of the world or a different country, or even just leaving a conversation as a reaction? How many of you go to eat food to numb out and check out? Flight, right? Flighting, getting the hell out of there, that is eating. So we have a reaction, but of course, that reaction is going to have a consequence. Everything has a consequence, unless you're a man, in which case men don't think about consequences. But everything that you do or don't do is going to create a reaction. It's going to create a result, sorry. So if you eat, the scale will probably go up. If you don't eat, the scale will probably go down. Don't not eat for weight loss, okay? That's unhealthy. So you will have a result. Now, if you are seeing a result in your life that you do not want, that is probably because you have chosen the wrong thought. So you cannot control the event or circumstance, right? Because you can, to a degree, unless it's your thing that you did, you can't determine how you can't predict or determine how someone's going to speak to you. You can't change how someone's going to comment on your weight, right? You can't change that you've got a flat tire. These things happen. They don't happen to you because you're not a victim. They just happen. You're also not necessarily thinking negatively. So they just happen. Okay. So we can't just say, oh, it's a good or a bad thing, because then you are determining what result you have. Let me explain. So let's say the event or circumstance happens and you have a thought about it. If you have a negative thought surrounding that event or circumstance, what is going to happen? Well, quite frankly, you are going to have a negative feeling. And as you have a negative feeling, you will naturally have an emotion that is a negative emotion. You will have a reaction or inaction, and you will have a result. And all of that is going to be out of line of what you actually want. Okay? Negative thought equals negative result, typically. However, if you have a positive thought about something, you're going to have a positive result. Okay, so everything is neutral until you apply a thought to it. And from that thought, it just depends on what you decide about that situation, how you're going to analyze that situation, which is going to create the result that you have. Now, this is phenomenal. Why is it amazing? Because anyone can say or do anything to you. And now you realize that all of that, whether it's a negative or positive thing, is just down to what you choose to think about that thing. And you have 100% control of your thoughts. So if you choose to think positively about that thing, you are more likely to create a positive result. If you choose to think negatively about that thing, you'll get a negative result. So for example, let's say, like, feel free to drop in an example that you want me to translate or to change in this instance. But I'll give you an example of my client today. We finally hit the maintenance stage, so we're moving into maintenance. So she has hit a certain weight on the scale, so we have decided to go into maintenance. That's pretty much the event, which is almost all in her what's the word? That's her choice anyway. So what actually happened, as we discovered today, is the scale went up. So we're like, okay, let's have a look at the results. So the scale went up. What actions are you taking? Right? We're working backwards here. What actions did you take? She said, well, I didn't do this and I left this and I decided not to do that. I was like, okay, cool. What were the thoughts? What was the emotions that you were feeling? Like, how were you feeling going around about your day and those actions? And she said, just this fear. I said, okay. What is creating this fear? What are you thinking that is creating this fear? What if I fail maintenance? So what happened is she had a thought that she was going to fail maintenance, or a fear that she was going to fail maintenance. Now, this fear has come from previous examples and experiences because she had failed maintenance before. And just to let you know, even if you have a positive and a negative experience of something, you will naturally default to the negative, because if that was, I went into a cave and I survived, I went into a cave and died, like, don't forget, we're primal wiring here, guys. And I understand that if you died, that you wouldn't be having this conversation. But you know, the next time your brain's going to be like, well, no, I don't want to do that just in case we die, right? Remember, your only job is to stay alive. So if you've had two examples, one good, one bad, you will default to the negative, right? Even if you have hundreds of examples of it happening, of it working, you will still go, yeah, but what if it doesn't, right? Yeah, but what if it doesn't? That is a survival mechanism, not a thrive mechanism, okay? That is keeping you stuck, repeating the same old shitty results. Okay. So her thought was, what if I fail? Now, failure is a very, very bad thing, according to the brain. If we fail, that's like death. It's a negative emotion. Well, I don't want to experience that failure again. It was embarrassing. It was difficult. It was hard. It felt like a waste of time. So what she did is she had these thoughts that she's going to fail maintenance, which created a sense of fear. And from fear, she did not take any action. So she didn't do the tools that we had talked about. And I'm not going to go into those tools because they're irrelevant. She didn't do those things, right? And so what result did that create? A weight gain, because she wasn't being mindful about the way that she was eating and approaching her maintenance or weight loss journey. So when you start realizing that the way that you interpret, a thought is just your interpretation, the way that you interpret something that happens, you get to realize that you get to create the results that you want, right? So if you want to change your result, you can change the way that you think about the underlying thought. Like you can change that thought, which is amazing because you can create anything in your life, right? You get to create anything in your life if you change the way that you think about this. And this is the most beautiful thing. Now, the problem here is the nuance, here is the problem. The main problem is you will have many layers of experiences, stories, beliefs that create a lens, like a glasses lens, that create a lens. So when you see things, you are only seeing them through the filter of your past experiences, your identity, your beliefs. Okay. So the thing is you will see that through, like, this, it will happen. Your lens, which is essentially basically just a shit ton of bias, and then your mind is the thought. Okay. So you'll see the event, it will pass through the lens, and then you'll create a thought about it. That lens, don't forget, is made up of many, many things. That's made up of many stories, experiences, past failures, past traumas, past successes, everything. It has got to filter all the way through there to create what you think is your thought. So you will see, you'll be like, yes, but I see it. I see it as this. I see it as this. It is clear as day. But what you don't realize is you've got that lens on. Right now, I can see my screen. I can see myself. I can see the screen that I'm sharing and that I'm on Facebook. But do you know what I can't see right now? Blue light. Right? So I can tell you, no, I can see blue because I can. The whole bar at the top is blue. I can see loads of blue everywhere. But if I take this off, now I can see blue light. The only difference is you can't take this off. That is why coaching is so valuable. That's why things like therapy, coaching is so valuable, because your lens is essentially blinding you to the reality. This is where coaching comes in. What I can do and what your coach can do, what your mentor should be able to do, is help you identify your bullshit thoughts that are tainted by your reality because they don't see through your lens, right? They don't see through your lens, so their lens is not as biased as yours. And as a coach, I can ask questions to break the lens down so you can finally see what the event is without all of that emotion, without all the pain, without all the stories, so that you can then create a result that you want. Okay. So if that is something that you're like, wow, this is helpful, this is the stuff that we do inside my brand new programs. Okay. I've got two new brand new programs. I'm going to be doing a crazy stupid Black Friday offer. Never again will it be this price for a 12-week coaching program. So I will be releasing the details come Black Friday, of course, which is the 28th of November. If you are interested in hearing the details first, there will be limited spaces. I have literally, because there's going to be one-to-one involved in it, I need to make sure that there's enough space in my calendar. So get on the wait list, be the first person to say yes or no. If you would like to be the first person to hear about my Black Friday offer, make sure you drop the word waitlist in the comments here. Okay. And I would also really love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on this, because quite a lot of the time people will be like, but Bianca, you just don't understand. This is hard for me. This is this for me. But what they don't realize is they're not getting out of their own way by looking at the thoughts that's creating that, but that essentially you're pinning yourself into the corner with that shitty belief. But quite often you don't even recognize that what the shitty belief is, where it's coming from, or what it even smells like by that stage. So if you enjoyed this, give it a like. If you want to hear about the Black Friday offer, just comment waitlist underneath this video. And I hope it was helpful for you. I hope that you can see some of your shitty limiting beliefs. All right, take care, team. I'll see you soon. Bye.